Hi, all. A couple quick questions for you, just general world knowledge. We've got Canada as the second biggest country in the world, and it's just to the north of the United States. It's easier to drive to Canada than it is to drive to Disney World from Pennsylvania. Yet many people will do just the opposite. They'll drive to Disney World and not Canada. Canada has English-speaking people, just like us. They're English-speaking people. They also have French-speaking people. We have some French-speaking people in the New Orleans area. Canada's our biggest trading partner, so it makes sense that you would know the Prime Minister of Canada, right? Who's the Prime Minister of Canada? Go ahead. Yeah, answer that question. All right. Let's take Mexico, the only other country that touches us. We've only got two countries that touches here in the United States, Mexico and Canada. Mexico, we have a long history with Mexico. Actually, 1/3 of the United States, 1/3 actually used to be Mexican. Yeah, many people don't realize that. Places like Wyoming was part of Mexico. Can you believe that? And of course, New Mexico and Texas and California and Arizona and Colorado, all part of Mexico. Yeah, we took it back during the Mexican War with General Santa Anna, and so Mexico we have a lot of history with. Yeah, actually, on that last note, they make a joke. Mexicans, they say we don't need to immigrate. We're still there. We're still there in California. Anyway, who is the president of Mexico? You can answer that, right? We only border two countries. You're going to know the neighboring two presidents of the only two countries that border the country that you've grown up in, right? No, not necessarily. You feeling kind of stupid right now? Well, that's not my intention. My intention is to open this class on media audiences by pointing out that much of what we know about the world is due to the media that we access. And if you're not seeing President Obrador, the president of Mexico, in the news that much in American media, that name is not going to become familiar to you. You're not going to know that he was the former mayor of Mexico City and that there's a lot of promise that he brings to Mexicans. And so far, they seem to like the job that he's doing. And you're not going to know that Justin Trudeau is the Prime Minister of Canada, unless, of course, he ends up in a Hollywood entertainment segment on TV because he's seen to be a good-looking guy. Yeah, so that's what we're faced with when we look at the impact of media on media audiences. And that's what this chapter is all about. And actually, the term audience is problematic in and of itself. Because when you talk about an audience, you're talking about a conglomeration of people. You're talking about all kinds of different people. So I can say, okay, let's look at the people who are watching Orange is the New Black. That's a Netflix show. It's about a female prison. It's a Netflix series, I should say. And we're going to say, okay, let's study the people who watch that, and we'll learn about what kind of people they are by studying them as an audience. It doesn't really make sense because what you're doing is you're distilling people into their basic properties to try and understand them. So you're distilling them into gender and age, and you're distilling them into time they watch a TV show and household income. So the term audience is really problematic, and the way that I want to talk about it is really more instinctive. It has to do with what can we reasonably conclude about an audience that has access to a country's media system. I introduced this in the readings for today, which I'm hoping that you're doing, and that the way that I introduce it is I call it a rhetorical enterprise. A rhetorical enterprise, or rhetoric, or a rhetorical analysis is all about looking at the audience and trying to figure out what the meaning is that the audience gets from whatever communication they're accessing. So when you sit down as an American and you're going to watch television, not that many people do these days, but they sit down with the remote and they start scrolling up through the channels, kind of going back to our chapter on accessibility. How long is it going to be before you get to a PBS station? How long is it going to be before you get to a documentary that is showing you the way that people eat in Mexico, or showing you the president of Canada? You're going to go through all the network shows. They're going to be comedies. You're going to go through dramas. You're going to go through a lot of commercials, right? And so that's part of our landscape, that kind of way of viewing television. Similar when we go on the internet, you have cookies that are leaving a trail of what you like and what you go to on the internet all the time. And those cookies are being accessed by manufacturers, and being accessed by advertising agencies, and being accessed by social media sites and data mining companies. And they're constantly sending you ads for stuff that you like. I made the mistake of looking for cars. I'm still getting that very car that I was looking for popping up on my Facebook, popping up on Twitter, popping up else in other places. So the social media world, the internet world is also limiting, even though theoretically, right, the internet is a place where you could go to France today. If you can go look at Notre Dame burning down. Many of you have seen Notre Dame burning down, well, not burning down, but burning the last few days, and you have your free will to do that. But even that enterprise is going to be constrained by the media that you have access to, because those media are going to be trying to entice you towards their product based on your interests and needs and likes as you are studied as an audience member. So today's class is really about trying to understand how the media in your country influence the way the people of those country, the audience that's in that country, how those people are different from Americans in the way that they think and the way that they behave and the way they believe and their form. I know that when I go to Mexico in 1 month, the rhythm is going to be completely different than it is down here. The rhythm's very, very casual, very mellow, very, very tranquillo, they say, peaceful. And you're going around Mexico, and then all of a sudden you get jarred out of that peaceful tranquility because somebody passes by playing really loud banda music. Banda music is like an 18-piece band. It's got brass sections in it. It's got a tuba in it. And all of a sudden you're just like energized by it. That is a feeling, kind of like the way we talk about our RSC posts when we talk about form. The feeling that kind of rhythm imparts to a person in Mexico is very different from the United States, driving around in our vehicles, rushing to get through green lights, parking as close as we can, and sometimes even in illegal parking spots that are close to businesses so that we can get in and out, eating food from the cup holder in our car because of commercials showing us, that the burrito fits just perfectly in there. This is the way that audiences differ in just a very, very light discussion here between Mexico and between the United States. And that's your job today, is as you start to wrap up all of the readings for the class and bring them to a head, because ultimately we're trying to understand how a media system in the country that you're studying differs in terms of its impact on the people in that country. And in so doing, you're going to learn a lot about yourself. You're going to learn a lot about your own limitations, which is only natural. Your own limitations just based on the media that you're accessing. You won't know, for example, that there's a TV show out there right now, if you're only watching American TV shows, that is one of the most controversial TV shows I've ever heard of, and it is considered to be completely degrading by most, but not all, women. It is a show where you have a talk show host sitting in a studio, and a woman comes in and she disrobes. And this person, this male sitting in the studio, brings on a guest every week who's usually a poet or an author. This show is taking place in Denmark on public television. The woman disrobes, and then they start to analyze her body. They have her turn around. They talk about her qualifier here. I'm going to say a word that's going to be considered to be degrading, but I want to mention it like it's being mentioned. They'll talk about her ass. They'll talk about her, quote, tits. They'll talk about things that are really degrading and considered to be objectifying women by the vast majority of people. And yet this is a TV show in Denmark, and you wouldn't know about that if you grew up strictly on a diet of TV shows that are available only in your home country. That's what this class is all about today. We're trying to understand how the rest of the world differs by studying your own country and your own country's media system. And when I mentioned public television there in Denmark, and that's one of the focal points of the readings today, and also of where I'd like you to look at, and that is that a lot of countries have differences with the U.S. in terms of the amount of resources and money that's devoted to public service media. Here in the United States, we do have a very much appreciated and respected PBS and NPR. They are part of the same public broadcasting system. PBS is for television, public broadcasting system, and NPR is for radio, National Public Radio. And most of us grow up with Sesame Street. We grow up with learning how to share through Big Bird and all the characters that are on Sesame Street. Elmo is an icon in our culture. But then we kind of move away from public broadcasting and go into MTV when we're youngsters. At least that's the way it used to be. I'm not sure if it still is today. And then we're moving over into, next we go to Disney after PBS. Parents are babysitting us with Disney. And then after Disney, we go to MTV, and then after that, it's off to the races. Video games, and you're hitting 16, 17, 18, and you're watching whatever you want. But that's kind of our diet with public broadcasting in the U.S., and maybe, just maybe, you will return to PBS and NPR in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, when you start a big income and you have a family and you're wanting to have more educational programming on that. You might return to it then. That sort of describes the average glide path of an American audience member versus a lot of countries out there, mostly European countries out there, that have really robust public media systems where you actually have public media in the realm of competition for audience's attention, young people's attention. So in Britain, for example, you have Radio 1. Radio 1 is a pop music radio station. It's a BBC radio station, and you have that station and it's playing the latest hits because the government wants to be in play, not as a propaganda machine for young people, but wants to be in play and having an influence on young people's lives that are outside of just commercial interests. Commercial interests is what are exclusively serving our young people in our country, right? Because it's commercial radio stations that are serving up the music that young people are listening to. You're not having public radio stations. So public broadcasting versus commercial private broadcasting as it is also known, is a big macro idea that we're studying here. And when you look at broadcasting as a public service versus as a product, which is what is implied by those two different ways of broadcasting, it brings about very different purposes of the content and what you're trying to achieve. If my purpose is to provide a service to you, just like electricity comes into your house, that's a service for you. It's a public utility, just like natural gas comes into your house. If my purpose is to provide television or radio as a public service, then I am not trying to make money off of you, and therefore I don't need to shorten the content so we get ads in. Therefore, I don't need to make sure that I don't offend a business that might be a client of our television station that buys a lot of ads. I don't need to do anything other than just try and provide a service. So I can talk about gangs in the United States. I can talk about drug addiction. I can talk about Olympics. I can talk about sports. I can talk about any subjects in public service media, and it's not with the motive of trying to leverage that into purchases. And that's what happens when media is offered as a product. It completely changes the media content. News as a product is going to be short, and you're going to have short sound bites. You're going to have the really, really nasty sounding stories at the beginning of the newscast to spike the audience. And you're going to have the really not so exciting stories, but maybe bigger impact stories towards the end of the newscast. I tell you what, if this giant grocery store goes up here in East Stroudsburg University in the next 6 months, you're going to see huge changes around here because it's going to lift up the area. That's a big story. But I tell you what, somebody gets shot on 2nd Street in Stroudsburg, what's going to be the lead? It's going to be that one, because more people will rubberneck to that story, just like when we drive. Can't help it, right? It's human instinct. And advertisers and people who sell media content as products, they know that. They know that we can't control ourselves. They know that if they make us feel like we're totally insecure, we're going to buy some facial cream, or we're going to dye our hair, or we're going to take some supplement to lose weight, or we're going to buy clothes that make us look less heavy than we are. They know how to get to us. That's what happens. Those are some of the implications of when you have products that are also media content. So you can check out the chapter and you can read about public service versus private media and see if that comes into play in your countries when you're making a country media post today. And that also is going to wrap up our final class of the semester. So just to see if you're watching these videos all the way through, if you use the word hippopotamus in your post today, I'm going to give you an automatic perfect score. Have a great day.